The silent warning you never noticed. Your cat may be trying to survive something painful right now without making a single sound, and the truth is that most owners would never notice it in time. That is what makes feline illness so dangerous. Cats are masters at hiding discomfort. While dogs often seek attention when they feel sick, cats tend to retreat into silence. They continue walking through the house, sitting near the window, sleeping in familiar places, and staring at you as if nothing has changed. But inside, something may already be wrong. Animal behavior specialists explain that this reaction comes from survival instincts that cats still carry from their wild ancestors. In nature, weakness attracts danger. A sick animal becomes vulnerable. Because of that, cats learn to hide pain as long as possible. Even domesticated cats living safely inside loving homes still follow this instinct without realizing it. That is why some of the earliest warning signs appear in ways so subtle that people mistake them for personality changes, tiredness, mood swings, or simple aging. And that is where the real danger begins, because the first signs of illness rarely look dramatic. Sometimes your cat simply becomes quieter. Sometimes they stop following you from room to room. Sometimes they stare longer at nothing, hesitate before jumping, or begin sleeping in places they never used before. These behaviors seem harmless when viewed separately, but together, they can tell a completely different story. What if your cat is not just resting more? What if the silence you noticed recently is not peace, but exhaustion? What if that strange distance between you and your cat is actually the way they cope with discomfort they cannot explain? Researchers who study feline communication observe that behavioral changes often appear days or even weeks before physical symptoms become obvious. The body starts struggling quietly first, then the habits begin to change. And because cats move through these changes so subtly, owners often realize something is wrong only when the condition has already become serious. That is why some people later remember tiny moments that suddenly make sense. The cat who stopped jumping onto the couch, the cat who no longer waited near the kitchen at feeding time, the cat whose eyes seemed different somehow, even though nobody could explain why. At the time, these details felt insignificant, but in reality, they were silent warnings. One of the most heartbreaking truths about cats is that they rarely ask for help directly. Instead, they communicate through small emotional shifts, body language, and broken routines. Specialists in feline behavior explain that cats speak through patterns, and when those patterns quietly change, something deeper is often happening beneath the surface. In this video, you will discover 5 warning signs that may indicate your cat is sick and hiding it from you. Some of these signs are so subtle that even experienced cat owners completely overlook them. And once you learn to recognize them, you may never look at your cat's behavior the same way again. The strange distance when your cat starts disappearing. One of the first warning signs that something may be wrong with your cat often looks deceptively simple. They begin disappearing from your life in small, quiet ways. Not completely at first, just enough for you to feel that something is different without fully understanding why. Maybe your cat used to follow you into the kitchen every morning, but now stays hidden under the bed for longer. Maybe they once slept beside you every night, but recently started choosing isolated corners of the house. Some owners notice their cat spending more time inside closets, behind furniture, or in darker, quieter places where nobody disturbs them. At first, it seems harmless. Cats are independent. After all, they like silence. They enjoy solitude. But experts in feline behavior explain that there is a profound difference between a cat enjoying personal space and a cat emotionally withdrawing from its environment. Researchers observed that when cats feel physically vulnerable, they instinctively search for safety and invisibility. This behavior comes from survival patterns deeply rooted in their nervous system. In the wild, a sick cat that exposed weakness became an easy target. Hiding increased survival chances. And even though your cat may live inside a safe home filled with love and comfort, that ancient instinct still exists inside them. That is why isolation can become one of the earliest silent warning signs of illness. The frightening part is how subtle this transition usually feels. Your cat does not suddenly vanish overnight. The change happens gradually. They stop sitting near the window when the family is together, they avoid busy rooms, they hesitate before approaching people. The cat that once rested comfortably beside you now chooses cold floors, hidden corners, or places where nobody looks very often. And many owners unintentionally ignore this moment because the behavior still appears normal enough. But specialists explain something important. Cats usually do not isolate themselves emotionally without a reason, especially affectionate cats, especially cats that built routines around human presence. When a social cat suddenly becomes distant, the behavior itself becomes a message. Sometimes the reason is stress, sometimes fear, but sometimes it is physical discomfort slowly growing inside the body. One detail researchers frequently mention is that sick cats often seek silence because stimulation becomes exhausting. Noise, movement, touch, and interaction can feel overwhelming when the body is struggling. So, instead of asking for help directly, the cat quietly removes itself from the world around it. And that is why this sign becomes so dangerous. Because while owners interpret the distance as personality, the cat may actually be trying to cope with pain alone. Many people only understand this after the situation becomes serious. They remember the strange silence, the unusual hiding spots, the growing emotional distance, and suddenly all those small moments connect. But there is another warning sign, even more subtle than isolation. One that many cat owners never think to observe at all. The eyes. The eyes that stop talking, subtle changes in expression. Long before a cat shows obvious signs of illness, the eyes often begin to change in ways most people never notice. And once you learn to recognize these changes, it becomes impossible to ignore how much cats communicate without making a sound. Feline behavior specialists explain that cats speak constantly through their eyes. The intensity of their stare, the rhythm of their blinking, the way their pupils react, and even the emotional weight behind their expression can reveal far more than owners realize. Healthy cats usually have an alert presence in their gaze. Even calm cats tend to observe their environment with curiosity and quiet awareness. But when something is wrong physically, that expression can slowly disappear. Some owners describe it as their cat looking different somehow, even though they cannot explain exactly why. The eyes may seem emptier, less reactive, less emotionally connected. A cat that once watched everything around them carefully may suddenly spend long periods staring blankly into space. Others begin avoiding eye contact altogether, especially when discomfort increases. Researchers who study feline pain observed that sick cats often reduce facial expressiveness without owners consciously noticing it. Their face becomes more neutral, tired, or emotionally distant. The change is subtle, but incredibly important. Sometimes the blinking changes too. A cat in pain may blink more slowly than usual, not out of affection or relaxation, but because maintaining normal alertness becomes exhausting. In other cases, the eyes remain partially closed for longer periods. Especially during moments when the cat would normally appear attentive, specialists explain that physical discomfort drains mental energy, and the face often reflects this fatigue before the body visibly weakens. Then there are the pupils. Healthy cats constantly adjust their pupils according to light, emotion, excitement, and focus. But experts noticed that illness, pain, or stress can alter these reactions in strange ways. Some cats develop unusually dilated pupils, even in calm environments. Others seem less responsive visually, as though the connection between them and the world around them has weakened. And perhaps the most heartbreaking sign of all is when the eyes stop speaking emotionally. Cat owners who share strong bonds with their pets often recognize this instinctively. They feel as though their cat is physically present, but emotionally quieter. The playful spark fades. The silent conversations through eye contact begin disappearing. And because this change happens gradually, many people convince themselves they are imagining it. But animal behavior experts explain that the eyes are often one of the first places where pain quietly reveals itself, before movement changes, before appetite changes, before the body visibly struggles. The eyes change first. And the terrifying part is that many cats continue behaving almost normally while this happens. They still walk around the house, they still sit near you, they still try to maintain routine, but the expression becomes heavier, more distant, as if the body is carrying something invisible. That is why experienced veterinarians often pay close attention to facial tension and eye behavior during examinations, because the body may hide suffering, but the face eventually begins revealing what the cat is trying desperately to suppress. And after the eyes begin changing, another silent transformation usually follows. The daily routines, the routines that quietly change. One of the most dangerous things about feline illness is that it rarely begins with dramatic symptoms. It begins with routines that quietly stop feeling the same. Tiny habits shift little by little until the cat you know so well starts behaving differently in ways that seem too small to matter. And that is exactly why so many owners miss the warning signs. Researchers who study feline behavior explain that cats depend heavily on routine because routines create safety and predictability. Healthy cats usually repeat behaviors with remarkable consistency. They eat in familiar patterns, groom themselves carefully, sleep in preferred spots, and move through the house with quiet confidence. So when those routines begin changing without explanation, the behavior itself may become a silent message. Sometimes, the first sign appears during feeding. Your cat still approaches the food bowl, but something feels different. They eat more slowly. They stop halfway through meals. They stare at the food before taking a few bites and walking away. Some cats begin showing less excitement around feeding time altogether. And because they continue eating enough, owners assume everything is fine. But specialists explain that many sick cats do not stop eating immediately. Instead, they lose enthusiasm first. Pain, nausea, fatigue, dental discomfort, and internal illness can slowly change the emotional experience of eating long before appetite disappears completely. That subtle loss of interest often arrives quietly, almost invisibly. Then the sleeping patterns begin shifting. A cat that once slept peacefully at night may suddenly become restless during unusual hours. Some start hiding during the day and wandering silently at night. Others begin sleeping far more deeply than normal, as though the body is constantly trying to recover energy. Researchers observed that sick cats frequently change sleeping locations too, especially when certain surfaces or positions become uncomfortable physically. And then there is grooming. Healthy cats are naturally meticulous animals. Grooming is not just hygiene. It is emotional regulation, comfort, and instinctive self-care. So when a cat suddenly stops grooming certain areas properly, specialists pay attention immediately. The fur may look rougher, uneven, oily, or less organized. Some cats stop grooming because movement becomes painful. Others lose the energy required to maintain the behavior consistently. But one of the most overlooked signs happens during movement itself, the hesitation. Your cat pauses before jumping onto furniture they once reached effortlessly. They calculate distances longer than usual. They climb more slowly. Sometimes they avoid certain places altogether without owners noticing consciously. Researchers explain that cats instinctively try to adapt to discomfort instead of exposing weakness. So rather than crying out in pain, they simply begin modifying behavior, and that adaptation can look almost invisible inside everyday life. That is what makes these routine changes so frightening. None of them seem alarming alone. A slower meal, a missed jump, a longer nap, but when several small behaviors quietly change together, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Because cats rarely announce suffering loudly. They whisper it through broken routines. And for many owners, the next sign feels even more emotionally confusing, because it changes something deeply personal between the cat and the person they trust most. Affection, when affection changes without explanation. One of the most emotionally confusing signs that a cat may be sick is when the relationship itself suddenly feels different. Not because the cat stopped loving you, but because physical discomfort quietly changes the way they seek comfort, safety, and connection. Some cats become unexpectedly distant, others become unusually attached. And both reactions can be warning signs. Feline behavior specialists explain that cats often change social behavior when their body is struggling internally. The difficult part is that owners usually interpret these changes emotionally instead of physically. They think the cat is upset, moody, aging, or simply acting differently for no reason. But researchers observed that illness can deeply affect the way cats interact with the people they trust most. A cat that once loved sitting beside you may suddenly avoid physical contact. They move away when touched, they stop climbing onto your lap, they no longer sleep near your legs at night. Even gentle petting may seem overwhelming or irritating. And because cats are naturally independent animals, many owners convince themselves this behavior is normal. But specialists explain that physical pain often changes the emotional tolerance for interaction. Touch that once felt comforting may now create discomfort. Being held may pressure sensitive areas of the body. Noise, movement, and stimulation may suddenly feel exhausting. So, instead of expressing pain directly, the cat quietly withdraws from affection itself. Then there is the opposite reaction, which surprises many people even more. Some sick cats become intensely affectionate. Cats that normally enjoy independence may suddenly follow their owner everywhere, sleep unusually close, or demand constant physical presence. Researchers who study animal behavior explain that vulnerable cats sometimes seek emotional security when they feel physically unwell. In moments of weakness, the trusted human becomes a source of protection and stability. That is why some cats begin behaving almost clingy before owners realize something is wrong. They sleep against your chest every night. They remain near you constantly. They watch you more intensely than before. And sometimes, they begin purring during moments that do not feel normal emotionally. Many people believe purring always means happiness, but specialists explain that cats also purr to comfort themselves during stress, fear, pain, and physical discomfort. Scientists observed that purring may help regulate emotional distress and even promote calming effects within the body. That means a cat purring excessively while appearing withdrawn, tired, or emotionally different may not always be relaxed, and one subtle detail breaks many owners' hearts once they understand it. Sick cats often change the way they sleep near the people they love. A cat that once curled up openly against you may start sleeping with more tension, more distance, or in protective positions. Others suddenly press themselves closer than ever before, almost as if they are searching for reassurance without knowing why. Because deep down, the body already knows something is wrong. And before visible symptoms appear, the emotional bond often changes first. That is why experts constantly remind owners to pay attention not only to what cats do, but to how their emotional energy feels. Cats communicate through patterns, closeness, tension, eye contact, and physical presence. When those emotional rhythms quietly change, the body may already be fighting something invisible. And soon, another sign begins appearing. Not in their emotions, but in the way they move. The silent pain in their movements. One of the clearest signs that a cat may be hiding illness often appears in the smallest movements imaginable. Not dramatic limping, not collapsing, not obvious weakness. The real warning usually begins with tiny physical hesitations, so subtle that most people never notice them until the behavior becomes impossible to ignore. That is the frightening part about feline pain. Cats are experts at adapting to discomfort while pretending everything is normal. Researchers who study feline movement observed that cats instinctively modify the way they use their body long before they stop moving completely. Instead of crying out or visibly reacting, they compensate quietly, they shift weight differently, they move more carefully, they avoid unnecessary effort. And because these adjustments happen gradually, owners often mistake them for laziness, aging, or temporary tiredness. But the body is already trying to protect itself. One of the earliest signs often appears during jumping. Your cat still jumps onto the couch, the bed, or their favorite furniture, but something feels slower, more calculated. They pause before jumping. They stare longer at the distance. Sometimes they climb instead of leap. Other times, they simply stop going to places they once loved without any explanation at all. Specialists explain that cats experiencing discomfort frequently begin avoiding movements that create pressure on joints, muscles, teeth, or internal organs. And because cats naturally hide vulnerability, they try to adapt silently instead of showing visible pain. Then, the small posture changes begin. A healthy cat usually moves with fluidity and relaxed control. But a cat hiding discomfort may sit more stiffly, lie down more cautiously, or shift positions repeatedly because resting comfortably becomes difficult. Some cats begin keeping their tail lower than usual, others stop stretching fully. Researchers also observed that sick cats may reduce playful body movements because conserving energy becomes more important than interaction. And sometimes the difference is almost emotional rather than physical. The cat no longer moves with the same confidence. Owners often describe this feeling instinctively. They say their cat seems heavier, slower, quieter, or strangely careful, not dramatically sick, just different in ways they cannot fully explain. That is exactly why these signs become so dangerous, because the cat is still functioning, still walking, still eating sometimes, still trying to maintain normal life. But underneath those ordinary behaviors, the body may already be struggling every single day. Animal behavior specialists explain that cats often continue moving despite pain because survival instincts push them to maintain normalcy as long as possible. In nature, showing weakness could mean death. So the body learns to hide suffering beneath controlled movement and silent endurance. And many cats become incredibly convincing. Some continue greeting their owners normally while experiencing chronic discomfort. Others continue climbing onto furniture, even though each jump causes strain. The instinct to appear fine is deeply rooted inside them. That is why subtle movement changes deserve attention immediately, not panic, not fear, attention. Because when the body begins negotiating with pain instead of moving naturally, the cat is already telling a story without words. And unfortunately, many owners make one critical mistake at this stage, a mistake that delays help until the suffering becomes impossible to hide anymore. The most dangerous mistake cat owners make is not cruelty, neglect, or lack of love. In most cases, it is something far more innocent and far more common. They assume that if the situation were serious, the cat would make it obvious. But cats rarely do that. And that misunderstanding delays help for countless animals every single day. Feline behavior specialists explain that humans naturally expect visible suffering. We are used to emotional expression. We expect dramatic reactions, loud complaints, obvious weakness, or clear behavioral collapse. But cats evolved differently. Their survival depended on hiding vulnerability for as long as possible. And even inside safe homes, surrounded by people who love them deeply, that instinct still controls how they react to pain. That is why many owners unknowingly explain away the warning signs. He's probably just getting older. She's always been lazy. Maybe he's just tired today. Cats like being alone sometimes. And little by little, the unusual becomes normalized. Researchers who study feline illness observed that owners often recognize the changes emotionally long before they accept them logically. Deep down, they feel something is different. The cat no longer moves the same way. The energy feels altered, the routines are changing. But because the signs appear gradually, the mind keeps searching for harmless explanations, until the body can no longer hide the truth. That is the heartbreaking moment many people remember forever. The moment they suddenly realized the signs had been there all along. The hidden sleeping, the strange silence, the hesitation before jumping, the distant eyes, the emotional withdrawal, the subtle change in appetite. Individually, each behavior seemed small, but together, they were the body quietly asking for help. Specialists explain that cats rarely transition from healthy to visibly sick overnight. Most of the time, there is a long, invisible stage where the cat continues functioning while suffering silently. And because cats are so good at masking weakness, owners often underestimate how serious the condition has already become. One of the most dangerous assumptions is believing that a purring cat cannot be sick. But researchers observed that cats may purr during pain, stress, fear, and physical discomfort as a form of self-soothing. Another dangerous assumption is believing that eating automatically means the cat feels fine. Many sick cats continue eating until the illness progresses significantly. Cats survive through adaptation. That is what makes them so resilient. And tragically, that is also what makes their suffering so easy to miss. Animal behavior experts constantly remind owners that changes in behavior are often the earliest medical clues available. The body speaks through patterns before symptoms become dramatic. A cat does not need to collapse to be unwell. Sometimes the quietest changes carry the most important warnings. And perhaps the most painful truth of all is this: the cat was never trying to deceive you. They were trying to survive. That is why paying attention matters so much. Not out of fear, but out of connection. Because the owners who notice the smallest emotional and behavioral changes are often the ones who help their cats before the situation becomes critical. And once you understand how cats hide suffering, you begin seeing them differently forever, not as silent animals, but as creatures constantly communicating in ways most people never learned to notice. Your cat may already be trying to tell you. Your cat may never walk up to you and show obvious weakness. They may never cry loudly, beg for help, or make their suffering easy to understand. That is not how cats survived for thousands of years. They survived through silence, through control, through hiding vulnerability until the very last moment possible. And that is why learning to observe them changes everything. Because once you understand feline behavior deeply, you begin realizing that cats are communicating constantly, not through words, but through patterns, through routines, through movement, through distance, through the eyes that slowly lose their brightness, through habits that quietly change without explanation. Researchers and animal behavior specialists explain that the earliest signs of illness are often emotional and behavioral long before they become physical. The body whispers first, the cat adapts second, and visible symptoms usually appear much later. That is why the smallest details matter so much. The cat that suddenly sleeps in hidden places, the hesitation before jumping, the slower eating, the unusual silence, the strange change in affection, the eyes that no longer look the same. None of these moments should automatically create panic, but they should create awareness. Because cats rarely change behavior without a reason, especially when several small changes begin appearing together. And the hardest part for many owners is realizing that their cat may have been trying to communicate discomfort for weeks without being understood. Not because the owner did not care, but because cats speak a language most people were never taught to recognize. Specialists explain that strong bonds between cats and humans are built through observation. The owners who notice illness earliest are usually not the ones with medical training. They are the ones emotionally connected enough to recognize when something feels different, even before they can explain why. That instinct matters. Because sometimes your cat's life depends on someone noticing the silence before the suffering becomes visible, and maybe that is the most important truth of all. Your cat does not hide pain because they do not trust you. They hide pain because instinct tells them survival depends on it. But despite that instinct, their behavior still changes. Small details still escape. Tiny emotional shifts still appear. And for the person paying attention, those quiet signs become a message. A message that says something inside the body is no longer right. So after this video, watch your cat differently. Not with fear, with awareness. Pay attention to the routines, the movements, the emotional changes, and the silent behaviors most people ignore. Because sometimes the difference between early help and late discovery is hidden inside moments that seem completely ordinary. And perhaps your cat has already been trying to tell you the truth for a long time now. Not with words, but through every small behavior you almost overlooked.